Vamos ya con la siguiente entrevista con Colin Graham, director de estrategias multiactivo de la gestora neerlandesa Robeco. Colin, thank you so much for being in Negocios Televisión. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Colin, we're going to speak about a report that you title "Inflation Barks More Than It Bites." Why do you think so? Do you believe this inflation will be easy to fight?
I think it's been proved so far that despite raising rates faster than they have in previous cycles, that inflation is not tamed yet. And so, from my perspective, when we look at this, and Robeco, when we look at the longer term, thinking about 12 to 18 months time horizon, we really don't think that inflation is going to fall enough for the Fed to cut rates, as the market is pricing in at the moment. So for me, the Fed's going to have to navigate through this year that inflation is not coming down, growth is slowing, and therefore they are, as with previous cycles, they've been able to cut rates in order to re-stimulate growth. However, this time, I'm not sure they're going to have that luxury of being able to cut rates when things go wrong.
You say in this report that we may have gone back to the 70s after the OPEP cuts. Do you believe that this is the case?
Look, things are very different now. In the 70s, we had many different, more structural issues. If you look at the labor market, if you think about the mobility of labor around the globe, not just Europe, but the US, then I think that there are some similarities, but I think there's some very much big differences. If you think about China and India's influence on the global economy now compared to the 70s, that's another aspect of disinflation that is coming through the global economy. So we're not going back to the 70s. However, the tools for fighting inflation have still got to be deployed in order that we don't get the second round effects of the wage spiral. Then that increases aggregate demand for goods, services, and therefore you require higher wages in order to pay for those future goods as well. So, for me, we're not there yet in terms of saying we have vanquished the spectre of inflation, but it's going to be a very interesting few quarters as the Federal Reserve and the ECB both deal with this inflation pressure and not being able to cut rates as they have in previous cycles.
You say that the idea that central banks are not ahead of events has disappeared, except maybe in Japan. Why do you believe that the Bank of Japan, for example, keeps saying that they should buy bonds to tame inflation? Because this is completely the opposite that the Fed or the ECB is doing right now.
Yeah, I think the Bank of Japan's in a difficult position, and in a different position than both the US and the ECB, because for them, they've been in deflation for maybe 2 decades. And so they have to be sure that they have exited deflation. And I think that's what they're trying to do, to make sure that there is no way they can go back to a deflationary economy. If central banks have the tools to fight inflation, they don't have the tools to fight deflation. And the Bank of Japan has proved that over the last couple of decades.
Colin Graham, director de estrategias multiactivo de la gestora neerlandesa Robeco, thank you so much for being here this afternoon, Colin. It's been a pleasure to speak to you.